Hello, everyone. This is Daniela, the founder and the host for the Still Standing podcast, which is a part of the Still Standing Together series that includes this podcast, support groups and workshops for women, an online community of positivity, and apparel. And if you listened to episode 1, you heard that I started this a few months ago, and the podcast was designed to be a way for us to follow up with our attendees from our support groups and workshops. And this was also a way to reach out to more people to help them while they're going through any struggles or challenges in their lives. You know, it's hard for us to see the light during the struggle, and what really had helped me was talking to people, talking to therapists, talking to a mental health professional, whether it was traditional or non-traditional, meeting up with other women in my position who are maybe entrepreneurs, who are artists. For others, maybe it's mothers, maybe it's people who are transitioning in some way or another. Maybe they're moving or relocating to another city to live in. Maybe they just need a change, or, maybe it's the uncontrollable. Something has happened that we just can't prepare for. I wanted to create this community to support everybody so that they had resources and tools and go-tos and honest talk, honest conversation, honest support, and openness to make them feel as though they're not alone. It's important that whatever I do through these podcasts or through any of these resources through Still Standing, that there's a sense of togetherness and there's a sense of reliability, but there's also a sense of self-discovery.
As we had spoken earlier, I really do believe that sharing stories is how we create change in our own personal lives, because now we know that we're not dealing with this by ourselves. We're not alone in this. That someone else has experienced something very similar to our story. So it's possible to overcome it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Still Standing podcast. You just heard from our guest today, Kahila, who is a psychotherapist coaching you through life. Kahila speaks about sharing her story so that she can help others heal. And she does this throughout her work with women, coaching them and working through their emotional and mental blocks. She shares so much about her life and the reasons why she's able to get used to change quickly, adapt, and also build that resiliency that we all need to continue to work on to stay strong and be able to handle the challenges that are thrown our way. When Kahila was a young teen, she and her family moved from Iran. She faced big changes coming to the States. She had to learn a brand new language and become familiar with new culture. Her parents were a major part in the reason why she feels she's able to have such a strong resiliency muscle. And she continues to share this with others by sharing her story. A few years after their time in America, at a time when she herself was going through a career transition, her mom, her hero, she says, the most important person in her life, was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. This was the biggest shock and the biggest pain she had ever felt. And she's going to share how she got over questioning, why is this happening? Why is this happening to her? Why is this happening to her mother? So through her story and through her work, continuing to coach women and help them to find that power of hope and help them find that drive to overcome what obstacles are thrown their way. She shares her story of being a caregiver with her mother and years of them working on holding a hopeful mindset and the power of the mind, that her mom was able to go into remission 3 times during years of facing this life-threatening cancer. Alongside those years of hope, she's also seen the loss of hope and what can happen when we do lose that mindset. It's a very emotional journey that she shares with us, and I'm so grateful that she and I were connected, because she'll get to share with you so many different perspectives and tools for learning how to let go and be able to get past the past. She stays in a solution-focused approach to help her to adapt and make decisions and continue to look at what she can do now and what we can all do now as a way to look at our life, knowing that we can overcome what hardships are dealt to us.
Thank you so much, Kahila, for joining me on this episode. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been so excited about this conversation.
Oh my goodness, me too. And I'm really, really happy that Oleg from one of the other podcasts that we've done through Still Standing put us in touch.
Yes.
He was, he hit the nail on the head with us because we instantly connected, which is amazing.
Totally. I know. We became BFFs almost right after the first call. It was like, I've known this girl forever.
It's so great. I love when that happens. I know.
Yes.
We're both across, right? We're both across the country from each other, so we will have to plan one day to meet.
Yes, for sure. That is the goal.
Oh, I love it. And I'm so inspired by your story and everything you've done that's happened through your past to help transform lives and help people find these breakthroughs. So I would really love for you to just give a big, long introduction about yourself and, what brought you to this point today.
Yeah, thank you for that. My story is pretty expansive from childhood to now, but really I think what would be important to highlight is that I've gone through a lot of changes in life, whether that was at a young age until adulthood, even in this moment as we're talking. And some of the really biggest changes in my life was that my family and I moved out of my birth country, which was Iran, at age of 12. I was 12, my brother was 13, and we moved to Germany. And the goal was to become citizens and stay in Germany and to live a life where we had more freedom of choice. And we moved to Germany, and as amazing as Germany is, and we absolutely love it, it wasn't the right place for us to make it home. And my dad had the visa to the US at that time, so we decided to come to San Diego. We had someone that was living here. We were like, you know what, let's go to San Diego, check it out, and if we don't like it, then, we can move back home. So I was 13 by the time we moved to the States, and we came here and we just completely fell in love with just San Diego and everything that it had to offer. So, but the thing is, not only having to have made such a big change and move at such a tender age, it was the fact that I didn't speak any English at all. We had a tutor in Iran when we were younger, but it's basic English. So all of that flies right out of your mind when you're put in the environment of the new language. So that was one of the biggest changes as a young teen, as a tween, really, to come to a state where it's like you're starting brand new. And you have to make new friends. You have to learn the language. You have to learn how to survive, essentially. And so I learned quickly. And I think in some ways my parents had always created this platform for us to kind of get used to change quickly. And honestly, me more than my brother because of our personalities. And that's a huge component to really talk about as well. But I was able to adjust to the topic of change quickly at that age. It was kind of like, I'm here now. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. I'm not going to talk about that I don't have friends here or whatever, or that I don't speak the language. It's like, what can I do to help myself instead of simmering in the thoughts of poor me, I don't know what to do type of thing. So, just moving forward as life started developing as I got older, I always loved the field of psychology and just understanding human behavior. I was always super, super observant as a little girl and just really watched how people spoke to one another, how their body language was, why they did some of the things that they did, why they said some of the things that they said. I was always so curious about that. And so I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and somehow fell into the field of real estate. And I was in real estate for 6-7 years. And I hated it. Let's be real here. And it just didn't speak to my heart, right? I always say, if it's not making my heart sing, I can't do it. And it wasn't making my heart sing. And as I was transitioning out and was trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Should I go back to grad school? And it was like, oh God, I don't want to go back to school and do all the work. So as I was thinking about all of that, my mom, who just my hero, my best friend, my world, was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. And this was just truly one of the biggest shocks and biggest pains that I would categorize of all the things that I've experienced in life, that being one that I just still cannot really let go of the shock and the pain of it. And it really felt like that first day, I remember everything that has happened so vividly still. It felt like you got hit by a train. It just took the air out of you, and you were just left with, oh God, how can the person who's always been, so kind to everyone, who's always taking care of herself, who is, the matriarch of the family, and who just was an angel, honestly, how can she be diagnosed with ovarian cancer? And so that's something, or just any sort of cancer. And that's something I think everyone kind of goes through, is that almost immediate, I don't understand, this doesn't make sense to me. I need to formulate something in my head that makes sense about it. And as we know, cancer or any other diseases, there's no rhyme or reason behind it. It just happens. So I immediately knew what I was supposed to do, which was I took on the role of a full-time caregiver with my mom, because my dad is a retired pilot now. And, my brother was working full-time. And so I took on the responsibility of, I'm going to do everything in my power to bring you back to health and to make sure that you overcome this disease. And that's exactly what I did with her. Throughout that time, as I was helping her go through her process, I noticed how much the human brain, again, was coming up for me, the human mind and our behaviors and our emotions. And so I decided to actually go back to graduate school as I was caring for my mom. Because as I was helping her, some of the things that we did was mindfulness practices, yoga, meditation. She went into remission 3 times during the 5-year process of cancer. And I witnessed the hope and the positivity and her mindset, and how powerful the human brain and the human mind is. And the first time she went into remission was actually, and this is another part of my story, was that I've been married and divorced. It was when my ex-husband had proposed to me pretty much right after her diagnosis. And my mom looked at me and said, I am going to dance at your wedding. And so I want to be cancer-free, and I want to have hair, which I thought was so cute. She's like, I want to have my own hair. I don't want to wear a wig at your wedding. And I was like, okay, Mom, I would absolutely love that. And this woman put herself in remission just with that mindset. And her oncologist was completely shocked of how quickly she went into remission, because her cancer was extremely aggressive. I witnessed that in her, and I witnessed the human power and the hope and the drive that we can have in any sort of situation that we're in to overcome that obstacle. And just so as we're talking about this, to tell you about the opposite side of it, I also saw when you do lose hope and that drive and that ability to say, no matter what, I'm going to be resilient and get over this hurdle that I'm facing. I saw the other side of it with my mom, to where the last 3 months of her life, after almost 20 plus surgeries and procedures, her body was just done. So she essentially decided that I don't want to live anymore. This is no longer quality of life for me. So when she let that go of that hope piece in her mind, she passed away in 3 months. And I'm not saying that no way am I blaming that she created the disease or the death or anything like that. I don't want the listeners to misunderstand me, but I'm just talking about the power of the human mind. So, and she fought hard in those 5 years. She fought like a freaking warrior. But you know, there comes a point where reality of quality life kicks in with everyone at every stage in our lives. But that's besides the point. Going back to witnessing the human experience and the human power, that just fueled everything that I'm doing today, whether that's becoming a psychotherapist, and after losing her, deciding that, you know what, there's more that I needed to do, that I needed to share the story with everyone. And so that has brought me to everything that I do today. You know, the triumphs, the wins, the losses, all of that has created really me, everything that I am as I'm speaking to you.
It's amazing, Kahila, and I really thank you for sharing that. And my heart goes out to you for everything you and your family went through and have gone through. And that's why, I really just did not want to even jump in on anything, although you raised so many powerful points and powerful, parts of your life. So I just thank you for sharing that, and my heart goes out to you.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
so I wanted to ask you, I know there's a lot more to the
Sure.
story, which I definitely want to dig deeper
Yes.
into. But kind of going back, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but hearing you talk about, the kind of the timeline of your life, it seems as though you have a really admirable strength and like superpower in being able to adapt really well as make decisions. So
Mm.
you mentioned about being 13, coming to a country where you didn't know the language. I can and can't relate to that. My family is from Italy, and I have
Mm-hmm.
relatives. My parents speak Italian, but they also speak English. So I don't know if I've actually ever asked them what it was like. I just assumed, they're my parents, they get through anything and they just
Mm.
got through it. But for me, my grandparents spoke Italian, and it was at times hard, and it becomes this barrier. So with that said, though, you mentioned that, and then you mentioned about then another phase in your life, and with going to graduate school or what you wanted to do, and you
Mm-hmm.
found that way to make that decision of, you know what, this isn't what's in my heart, I'm going to do this. And then same thing again, I noticed, coming back around to becoming your mother's caregiver. How, I don't know, maybe it wasn't as easy as it's coming off, because I know no decisions can be easy, especially big ones like those. But do you
Mm-hmm.
have anything you feel keeps you, very strong in your decision making?
Thank you for that. I think that's a great question. You know what's funny is that someone asked me a couple days ago, what are some of the tools, skills, or like modalities I use with my clients? And one of them, and unbeknownst to me and like how I've lived life, is a solution focused approach. And in solution focus, you literally you're hit with life, right? Just like you said, all the things that have happened. It's you tend to really focus on, what can I do now? This situation is here. To put it in a very simple term, it sucks. Right. It is painful. It is not at all what I was expecting. I was not ready for this. I was not prepared for this. But what now? What can I do to move forward? And somehow, and I think, again, I put this back on my mom and the way she raised me, and the strengths that I witnessed in her was the fact that she always looked at life in a perspective of, there's always things to move forward with, and that there's still a life to live ahead of us. And that, I think, unconsciously became how I deal with life. And thankfully, to the universe, to whoever, by nature, I am a pretty strong person, and I don't know why and how, but I just am. And so the way I've always looked at things is that I can either sit here and stay in the sadness of things, which I do. I always give myself time to process the emotions. And that's the key component of actually being able to find the solution. Because if you're not allowing yourself to experience the human side of everything, so which means your emotions, your thoughts, and your fears that come up, and the discomfort that comes up, if you are not processing those things as they're happening, you're going to get stuck in it because you're not allowing yourself to move through them. And I think that's the biggest mistake we make as human beings, is that everything feels so heavy and scary that we don't want to face it.
It's such a great point too that you bring up, because I wrote a note down to ask you, a lot of the work that is done through Still Standing, which I love that you hear. I love hearing you say that, your mom always taught you about moving forward and
Yeah.
the life to live, because that is what we're trying to really encourage in people, is to continue to move forward. So,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a connection there too. So, with that said, it's really nice for our listeners right now, because usually, people I speak with, or our support leaders for our support groups, it's focused on mental health. And a lot of the times I've
Yeah.
found it's been focused on a lot of anxieties or fears or things like that that the person has gone through. And I'm not saying, while I do think you are a superhero, I know you
No,
experience
far from it.
I know that you experience these things though, because you are human.
Totally.
So I did write down a little question. I want to talk with you about grief. So, that was one of my questions. Is, have you given yourself that time to grieve?
Absolutely.
It sounds like yes, but can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So I love that question. I'm still in the process of it. It'll never end. And that's what I want the people that are going through, the listeners, anyone, even if they're not going through immediate grief, whoever that's around them that's experiencing it, it's a process that never ends. I describe it as you have this wound, let's say on your arm, right? And there's a scab over it. It's now scabbed, and it's there. It somehow never heals. And once in a while, somehow the scab gets picked and it starts bleeding again. And the pain that is shot back to your brain to say, hey, I'm experiencing some pain on your arm, like what's going on, is the same as grief. When that starts bleeding, you're experiencing all the pain that you have experienced the moment you lose your person. So with that said, it becomes easier to manage. You learn how to manage the pain. You learn how to manage the steps of loss and the grieving process. I most definitely gave myself time, because I had active clinical clients when my mom passed away in 2014. And I took 3 months off from actually working with anyone, because I did not think it was fair for me to really not be present in any sort of session with anyone else, because I was in so much pain. So, and again, yes, you said you think I'm a super woman, but I'm not. As you can hear, I choke up during this conversation because the pain is still there.
Right.
But I literally, throughout the first year, I always tell my friends who have had losses or clients that the first year of loss is the most important year, because you have to allow yourself to experience everything that comes up. And it's not just about the stages of grief and the acceptance part of that this person is gone. It's of you living through their memories, you learning how to live through the good times rather than focusing on the reality of this person is no longer physically with you. And what I will tell you is that my spiritual side grew in a way that I never anticipated the first year after I lost my mom, because I wanted to understand what happens with the human soul, because I do believe that we have a soul, that we're not just this physical being. So I wanted to understand what happens after death, right? What's life after death? So I immersed myself in books and, podcasts and YouTube videos that talked about this. And I started following these leaders in the spiritual field to just gain understanding. And honestly, that process provided a lot of comfort for me, because I understood that my mom's spirit and soul is still living on. And that I allowed myself to understand, even though my brain isn't really able to quite wrap itself around what's not visible, right? Spirits and souls and things like that, life after death is not visible to our brain. So it doesn't have the capacity to understand it on a deeper level. But just creating that belief within me was something that was really helpful. But I went through all the pain. I went through all the tears. I allowed myself to cry, to scream if I had to do whatever I had to do. But I also found tools that were helpful for me. So like exercise was a huge, huge thing for me during that first year. And it is for me in a regular life anyway. But that first year, it was something that I utilized as a tool to break the tendency of diving into depression. And then music was another superpower of healing for me. And, just allowing myself to say no to people, setting really clear boundaries during that time, because I carried the load of my entire family, my parents and my brother, as well as my extended family, on my shoulders, all the time. That was kind of like my role in the family, was the person that you turn to solve all issues, all kinds of stuff. And once my mom passed, I set a very clear boundary to everyone. And I said, I am no longer responsible for anything. I need to heal me, because I have nothing else to give to anyone else. I am running on complete empty. So setting really clear boundaries is important during any sort of the grieving process. It doesn't have to be a complete loss of a human being. It can be loss of anything else, jobs, relationships, whatever. So setting that boundary was really, really huge for me. And then, just saying no to things. People want to be around you. And sometimes I didn't want to be around people. So allowing myself to be alone and allowing myself to really sit in the emotion of being alone, and knowing that the person that I relied on the most, who was really my backbone, who was honestly the only person that I ever truly trusted with everything in my life, and that knew everything about me. So, just kind of learning how to live through me now, right? How to trust me the way I trusted my mom. So there was just so much with it. But in the first year, especially, going through all of these things was essential. And if I did not allow myself to go through that, I'm telling you, I would not be able to speak with you today.
I don't know if you ever thought of it as like you had given so much, it was almost like a loss of yourself, which I feel people might go through in
Totally.
in any any type of situation is that loss of yourself, which can be the
Yeah.
hardest thing as well.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things, along with losing a loved one, especially so close to you, like your mother. But what is very refreshing and reassuring to hear you say, though, Kahila, is that you gave such great examples of what got you back, and one, hearing that you knew like you needed to give yourself time, which I hope our listeners really take into that importance and that value of giving
Yeah.
themselves time instead of throwing themselves maybe back into work or back,
Yeah.
back into anything, as you said, even just social engagements, things like that. That was one big thing that as soon as you said that, my eyes kind of widened and I was like, wow,
Mm.
incredible that she was able to, after going through all this, realize like I am giving myself time. And then the other thing too, which is amazing that I'm really happy for you that you were able to set and again, I'm saying this from a place of like I can't imagine what you went through and I
Mm.
can't even think to that level. As you said, sometimes our brains can't even get to that point because it's too hard.
Yeah. Right.
So but what's comforting is knowing that all of these all of these tools that you've been using are very, they're simple solutions. They're not like you have to go out to a store and spend $20,000, It's
Exactly.
like allowing yourself to say no. It's music
Yeah.
that's accessible to everyone. It's going and exercising, which can be, as simple as a walk. It's very accessible things to people to help them heal.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad the things that you just highlighted. Thank you for that. Those are brilliant points for people to hold on to, as you said, because it's so simple. It's so easy. It's so accessible. We don't have to go purchase it, right? We don't have to go like outside of our comfort zone to be something that we're not. And two key points that I wanted to touch on, and I appreciate you saying that absolutely I had to rediscover myself. I always describe the first year after my mom's loss as a rebirth for me, because I really did have to look within and really meet myself on a different level that I hadn't allowed myself to do so before that, because I was always on the go. I was always doing something. I was always helping someone else heal, someone else's crisis to be managed. And even though I was aware of my own emotions throughout that time, I never took the time to look within and allow myself to really become everything that I'm supposed to be. Right. And that is the biggest piece, is that we're always so afraid of letting go of our past self, even though it is no longer serving us. It is no longer valid. It should not exist in our present life. We're so scared of letting go of our past self and allowing ourselves to recreate a new, really person, a better version of ourselves based on the experiences we've had. Right. And that stops us. That actually creates more pain within us, because we're now fighting with two sides of us, because it's like the past, there's not a damn thing we could do about, right? But we're still holding on to it with everything we've got. And then our future self, our present self, is like, there's so much goodness in front of us and we're not reaching for it because you're stuck in that pile of crap. Excuse my language, but it's true. Like, you're stuck in the past and you're not letting us live. Right? So it's kind of understanding of, wait a minute, it's not scary to meet yourself again. It's not scary to allow yourself to recreate a better version of you.
I love that. I love that. And since being a therapist, a counselor, psychotherapist, coach, if I'm using the wrong terms, please let me
know. No, you're perfect. You're good.
I commend you so much for that, because I hold everybody in your position at such a high regard for what you do for us all.
No,
So
thank you.
thank you too. I wanted to ask you to just share with everybody, what your work entails.
Yeah. So I actually, just the way everything panned out in my life, especially in the last 5 years after the loss and my own rebirth, I now work with women only. My clients are all beautiful souls, female souls, and I work with them in helping them really break through emotional and mental blocks. And the reason why I started going
towards that is, again, as therapists, we're told to really, and I not at all am I bashing my field or anything like that, but we are not really allowed, we're encouraged not to share our stories, right? We're encouraged not to bring up our own experience in session, which again, I get why. But at the same time, as I was thinking, being in a traditional practice, and there was something in the back of my mind that just kept on saying, there's something more, you need to do more, you need to do more, this isn't it. And the coaching aspect of my work came up for me. And I thought, what if I'm able to really transition the work as a therapist and kind of change really the title of it and bring in more of a coaching aspect where I can, in a healing and a therapeutic process, bring up parts of my story and share my story, whether it's in session or on a bigger scale, like your podcast, which I so appreciate you giving me this opportunity to really share my story, to share my story with others so they can know that they are not alone in this process. That yes, people in my profession also are human beings, and we have really tough situations that we got to deal with. And no, it doesn't mean that we know exactly how to do this. I had no idea how to go through the grieving process. I knew the steps, right, as a professional, but like to actually go through it, I had no idea, right? So then I put myself through it. And so as all of that came up, I was like, I've got to help women heal themselves, because there's no way in hell that life is just limited to human suffering.
Right.
And I know as females, we tend to really share a lot of stories in our own minds, right? We create a lot of stories in our own minds. And then from that one incident that the story has started from, we go on adding a whole bunch of chapters. And all of a sudden, we've now created a movie scene in our mind. And it's like we've brought on so much stress and emotions just by that storytelling, that we are now dealing with so much more than just the mind and emotional side of it. It actually affects our physical being as well. So that's kind of the work that I do. I work with cancer patients, ovarian cancer patients, and I work with females and just going through any sort of experience of life, allowing them to understand how significant it is to let go of the past pain and to let go of suffering, and to really learn how to love yourself, the self-part component of it, the self-love component of it, and also to be able to look at your life and be like, I might not like what's happening right now, but it's not permanent. So how can I overcome this? How can I jump over this hurdle too?
Oh, it's such a great point. I want everybody to just put that on repeat right there, because it's such an amazing point. And I also love that you speak about, getting rid of your past story,
Yeah.
but also sharing that story, especially as a professional, for you as a professional in the industry. Um, I did call you a superhero in the beginning, but the reality of it is that it is comforting to know when someone's talking to you, as someone who goes to therapy and has had coaches before and
Yeah.
spiritual guidance and healers and things like
Yeah.
that, and spoken to so many traditional and non-traditional, therapists, coaches in this industry. Um, I I really appreciate when I hear my therapist say, "Oh, I go to therapy once a week." Oh, I
Yeah.
really appreciate that, because it's like, okay, I'm not the only one, excuse my language, who's maybe shit isn't together.
Right.
Or who is getting all these curveballs thrown at me, and it's like,
Exactly.
so, and it's great to hear about the past story, because I know from my own work and the work that I've heard from everybody I meet through Still Standing is like, to share it is that way to release it. And And I'll just tell you this real quick, and maybe if you want to touch on it about, um,
Yeah.
any advice of resilience, because I feel like you're very strong
Mm-hmm.
in that. What's
Thank you.
interesting is I created this whole concept of still standing out of, you know, recognizing that I had to go through the struggles that I've gone through. And for me, it was mental health and anxiety, depression. And I had to go through that. And it was sharing that, um, to make people understand or help people understand that, I had to go through that in order to, again, get myself to a place where, as you said, your rebirth, or get myself back to a place of myself. And it's interesting because as I've been healing, what's become hard is that every time I meet with a group, I'm like, oh, shoot, like I'm feeling good. What is, but because I've done so much work for myself, and it's almost like I try to live in that like moment where I was at a downward spiral so that I can help others relate. And it's so hard. And then, at some point it shifted in my mind that I realized like I can use my story, but I don't have to live in it anymore. And that's the example that we have to give, is that, we don't.
Amen,
Yeah,
sister.
it took a long time. You should, before some of the groups, I was like sitting on my couch, like, just be sad. And I was like, no, I'm in a really good place.
Yeah,
And
right,
I want to
right.
get myself back to that place. I've worked hard to get out of that. So, so your story is also just such a great example of like, you can share that story, but get out of that. So, all the work we've both done and continue to do, and everybody listening, what is that main component of resiliency, or what does that mean to you? How can we apply that whenever we need it?
Yes. Well, first of all, you brought on amazing points that I just really quickly want to touch on. Is that I firmly believe that you go through every single experience in life to be in the place that you are now. And I've always said to myself that I'm not going to allow my experience to just be an experience, that I have to pay it forward. That every pain, every triumph, every loss, every win that I've experienced in life is meant for me to help someone else go through their experience a little bit easier. So just like you said, you were meant to experience the emotional side of things, the depression, anxiety, those things, in order to build this platform, right? In order to be able to help other people. And I am a firm believer of that. And so that actually allows me, as we're talking about resiliency, is to think of it as, you know what, I went through this experience not only to help myself grow, but to help someone else grow, even if it's just one human being for the rest of my life. Right. So that's one big part of thinking about life, because a lot of times when we think of life and when we're in a really tough situation, our automatic response becomes, why is this happening to me? And I know we've heard that so much with everyone on social media and all of that around, but hearing it is one thing and really understanding it is another. It's really easy for us to let our brain go into that fight or flight response of, why is this happening to me? Why is everything bad always happening to me, right? Because it's easier to feel that way because we know how that stands in our brain. But what we can challenge instead is recognize that life is going to continue to challenge you. Life is going to continue to throw curveballs at you. But what my motto is that you can punch me to the ground over and over again, life, but I'm going to get back up with a stronger punch every time. I'm going to learn how to fight your ass, right? Like, I'll be damned if I stay on the ground. And it's a funny way of thinking about it, because it's like, well, shit, you didn't just knock me down and me stay down there. Like, I'm getting back up. I'm going to learn how to fight back. That mentality just becomes almost your new narrative, right? That you can come back from every situation stronger than before. Resiliency isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you create through self-efficacy, through really believing in your own strengths instead of focusing on your weaknesses. It's you learning how to self-regulate and to really learn how to problem solve, and just adapt to the situation, and just telling yourself, again, while this situation is here now, I can't do anything to erase it or change it. What I can do is change my response and change anything that's going to happen from here forward within myself. Right? So it's not, again, about that I have a special skill that no one else does or that a lot of other people don't. No, resiliency is built. It's your willingness to look at issues in a different perspective.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that real quick, Kahila, because that was my next question to you: is how can we continue to build that muscle? Because that was one of the questions I posed to you, and because I see it as a muscle. So and I'm glad that you brought that up. That it's something that we have to continue to practice.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you this, sorry to cut you off, but I'm so ADD that if I don't, I'm going to forget. But so one of the things is that I allow myself to fall from grace, right? And what I mean by that is that I am not always resilient. Let's be real here. I'm a human being. I have emotions. And as a woman, I have hormones and I tell a lot of stories in my head. And right, I'm an amazing storyteller in my head. Let's make that clear, by the way. But I learned how to stop those stories. But with that said, when something happens, when something that I don't like is happening, or when life is trying to push me around and make me fall to the ground, I'm like, ugh, what the hell? Like this again? I just dealt with something. Like, can I catch a break? Mm-hmm. Right? So I allow myself to fall from grace. So I always say, like, I give myself a day sometimes to go through some situations that I don't like. Right? So I allow myself to experience all those feelings, whatever is coming up, the anger, the frustration, which anger is really fear and sadness behind it. So I allow myself to experience all that. But the next morning, what I say to myself is, tomorrow is a new day, that I'm not going to allow myself to stay in this situation again, this feeling again. What can I do to create the first steps to moving forward? How can I figure out a solution? Is there even a solution, or do I just need to learn how to let it go?
And do you feel that giving that allowance to yourself to really feel it, do you feel that will help people to then have some more clarity?
Yeah, for sure. Because what we do is that we guilt ourselves for having emotions about it. Mm. Right? We guilt ourselves for like being upset or not being strong enough to figure it out, or for being sad. Like, we guilt ourselves for that. And then as we're guilting ourselves, more emotions add up to what was already the baseline. Do you see what I'm saying with that? So yes, experiencing it in that moment just clears out space for you to figure out other things. And those emotions aren't going to go away in just that one day. It's that it just reduces the severity of the emotions. Right? So it's going to take some time to heal, but it's just not as impactful as if you're not facing the emotions. Go ahead,
No,
please.
no, absolutely. I'm agreeing with everything you say, because I can picture myself in these moments, especially of the guilt you mentioned. It recently happened, last week, where I knew why I was feeling the things I was feeling, but I wouldn't let myself feel it, and I felt drained. And then I was punishing myself. I just needed to rest, and I was punishing myself, like, no, what's wrong with you? Why are you feeling? There's no reason for you to be feeling this way. And then when I was able to break it down, I realized why I was feeling that way and what I needed to change from there. And I felt so much for those few hours of like just beating myself up over it. So I apologize. I didn't want to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
I'm over here thinking like, oh my gosh, yes, she is hitting the nail on the head. So it's amazing what you're saying. And I'm really glad for our listeners to just be able to hear all your points you made, which, is why from the first time you and I talked privately, why I was like, I need everybody in our community and out there in the world to hear your messages.
Oh, you're so sweet.
No, absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
it ties in so closely to the mission and everything of still standing. The meaning of it is that, you gotta, there's ways to get back on your feet.
Totally.
It really ties into everything, as I said, that still standing stands for. So I just wanted to ask you a few more questions before we go. What is it that you can suggest to people to help them stay in that mindset of that hopeful mindset? That's something to look forward to, because I know that was a big part, as you mentioned earlier in your story. At some point, the hope was gone.
There's multiple branches to this, in my opinion. One is not believing in fear, in the fear that your brain is feeding you, because that is the first thing us human beings know how to do, is immediately connect with the fear. And our brain thinks that it's protecting us by giving us all these warning signs, right? By telling us all the things that could go wrong and all the things that are wrong already, and that it's never going to happen for you. It's never going to heal. You're never going to get over it. You're never going to come out of this relationship that's toxic for you, right? All of those things, our brain thinks that it's protecting us by giving us those things. So number one thing is recognize that those are all lies. Literally everything that is being fed to you through your fear perspective is all lies. None of it is reality. So number two is, once you realize that your fear-based thoughts are not real, is, again, I use this tool again with myself and all my clients, is asking yourself questions in that moment. Because when you ask yourself questions, you're allowing your subconscious mind to come into play, as well as your conscious mind, to where both of them are now looking for solutions, right? What can I do to overcome whatever I'm facing right now? How can I help heal myself? What tools can I use? Who can I call? Should I go sit down with a professional? Should I don't know, take some time away, right, to kind of regroup? Should I start writing? What do I need to do right now to do the first step of healing for myself? And then with all of that, knowing that nothing is permanent, knowing that just like we're able to create pain in our mind and in our physical being, we're able to heal it. We've forgotten how powerful our mind is. I'll give you an example. Before we started our conversation, I think I told you that I've been waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. for the last 5 or 6 days. So I've been pretty sleep deprived, and I need my sleep. I need my beauty rest. But so what I know to be true is how powerful our brain is. So one of the evenings, I literally told my brain before I fell asleep, I said, you are not waking up in the middle of the night tonight. I do not want you to wake up until 5:30 in the morning, which is my usual wake up time if I'm going to work out. I do not want you to wake up till 5:30 in the morning. So you're going to sleep throughout the time, and you're going to wake up without an alarm. I literally woke up at 5:29 the next morning, and I did not wake up in the middle of the night. So that's just a simple example of how powerful your brain is, and the messages that you send to it, especially to your subconscious mind, it is going to do exactly that, because it is actually obeying your orders. So when you are hopeful and you think that, you know what, this too shall pass, I know I'll figure out a solution to this, I know I'll get past this, I know I'll find ways of healing tools to overcome this situation too,
Thank you for being here, teaching me the lessons, because I'm only going to be stronger from here forward. That allows your subconscious mind to be like, oh shit, I need to look for a solution. Like, sorry, I curse a lot, if you haven't noticed. So then it's you're now trying to figure a solution. But when you tell your brain that you can't do it, yes, it's going to obey you, and it's not going to do it. It's not going to get over it. It's not going to move past anything. It's not going to heal you. So when I work with cancer patients, and it's literally healing all parts of you after the cancer diagnosis, it's a focus of your emotions, your mental thinking, your thoughts, and how those two affect your physical being, and how we can create this ease in our bodies. So it's not just a one way of answer of like positive thinking and like just stay positive, right? I'm a positive psychologist, but I cannot stand how our society is just like, just think positive. You'll get over it. Just stay positive. Like, I'm sorry, no. That is not the only solution, because I guarantee you after 5 times of saying, oh, I'm going to stay positive, but let me do positive affirmations, your brain is going to be like, dude, shut up. Like, I'm not understanding what you're telling me. Right? But when you follow those steps, then the positive affirmations or the positive thinking is now getting soaked in, because your subconscious mind has been looking for solutions. So now those are solutions that you're giving it along other tools.
I love it. It's so powerful. And I'm really so grateful for you to share that, Kahila, because oh God, I wish that we could keep going with this. There's so many great points that no matter what step or process or part of the journey you're in, just everything that you're sharing can really be applied and
Totally.
and utilized just at any stage and no matter what situation. So we
Absolutely. I do it every day. I'm not just sitting here preaching. Like, seriously, I just want to make that clear. Like, again, you said that it's good to hear the, professionals that are in this field to be human, right? So I'm telling you all this because I've tried it all out. I live it every day. Creating my own practice away from taking insurance has been one hell of a journey, right? I started 2 years ago with my own practice and doing this coaching thing. It has been one hell of a journey. So I've literally had to use these tools as I go through the process, because I know my mission and my purpose, right? So I just want to make clear that I'm not just sitting here trying to be an expert at all. The only reason why I'm able to really convey the tools that I use is because I use it. I use it every single day.
You are yes, no, and it's an example, and I can totally relate, because I get a lot from people. I'm very bubbly, or people are like, you're always happy, and so when I started to open up about depression, they were like, but that doesn't make sense. You're always happy, and I'm like, well, I'm always happy because every day from morning until night, I am constantly working on it, and there are times when I'm not always happy. And then I know I have to work harder from that morning and night, and it doesn't stop. And it's really, again, refreshing. I keep saying this word for you, but it's so refreshing because I can tell the honesty that's coming through from you of like, you had to live it.
Oh,
and that's what I'm so excited for everyone to hear.
Thank you. Something that you said, and I think that you're allowing yourself on those days that you have to work a little bit harder to remind yourself, to me, those are the days that you're loving yourself a little more. And that just like you would love your loved one, right? If they're having a bad day, you're going to try to love them a little bit more. You're going to try to be more considerate. You're going to try to just be kinder. So why can't we do that for ourselves? Why can't we love ourselves a little more that day that we're not feeling well?
Absolutely. I love that. And I want to just ask you, one final question, because at the end of these podcasts, I like to ask this, and I'm really curious to hear how you'll answer this based on what you mentioned about not just doing that positive thinking, but putting that work in. So it
Mm-hmm.
does sound like
Mm-hmm.
you do a lot of self-talk. Um,
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah, it's really, I'm like, wow, this is really the key component to everyone I talk to.
Yep.
Do you have anything that, you know, does get you through, um, no matter what?
A particular self-talk, you
Yeah,
mean?
something that goes a little deeper than just a quick little affirmation. Something that really
Mm-hmm.
hits home for you, that kind of snaps you back into that rediscovery and rebirth that you worked so hard to come to.
Yeah. One thing I do is really honestly talking to myself. We're always talking to ourselves anyway, right? That self-talk component of it, but we're stuck in the negative and downward spiral of it. So what I do is I literally say what my best friend would say to me or what my mom would say to me, right? I say, Kahila, you are feeling, you're heartbroken right now, right? Something has come up and it's really hurt your feelings. I get it. What can we do to help you through the process? Do you need to be sad? Do you need to listen to a good song? Do you need to go outside for a walk? Do you need to go sit in nature? Do you need to call someone? What do you need? So coming from a third place, almost a third person, asking yourself that allows me to walk away from the pile of crap that I was just sitting in my brain. Right? So, and that's the negative component. That's the negative self-talk of it. So it allows me to walk away and really start discovering what those positive affirmations are going to be, or if I need to, whatever I need to do for that day to help myself get through it. Right. So one thing that I will add, music is my best friend. So I know we've got to go too, but so really, really quickly, imagine, I've worked with dual diagnosis, so addicts, whether they had addictive personality and another diagnosis. Anyway, so when a craving comes up, what I have told them is always count to 7 first, and then get up from whatever situation that you're in where that craving is coming up. Get up from that. Either go walk, or go, I don't know, open your phone, listen to music, or go call somebody, go grab a glass of water from the kitchen. Whatever you need to do, stop yourself from that moment when the craving comes up. Stop your brain from going further into why it needs it, right? Our negative self-talk is a craving. Our negative self-talk is just like that desire of, I need some alcohol or that drug, because it is a drug for your brain. It needs it. It requires it because it's so used to it. So then you're only going to be able to interrupt your brain and create a new pathway if you are willing to get up from that negative self-talk. So I put on music. So I have I've made a list of songs that I know will get me out of whatever mood I'm in. So I'll put on music for myself. That's how I get myself out of negative self-talk. And even if I don't want to listen to that song at that moment, I'm still going to play it.